started the Pride movement in 2005, and we could never imagine at this time what all this campaign will lead to. And this campaign materialized in a historic decision of the European Court of Human Rights, which was delivered on the 21st of October last year, which said that Russia violated 3 articles of the European Convention, which is the right to freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, right not to be discriminated on the basis of sexual orientation, and the right for effective legal remedy of protection. I can tell you that this decision is not only the first ever decision against Russia confirming the violations of the rights of LGBT people. It's also the first ever decision which confirms that there is a breach of the right to freedom of assembly in Russia in general. And as we started our campaign, we couldn't even imagine that it will finally lead to our fight for freedom of assembly in general for all Russian people. Surprisingly, that after this verdict, Moscow authorities allowed the events, public events, of other opposition groups and human rights groups, which they previously banned. This concerns Strategy 31 in support of the Article 31st of the Constitution. This concerns the Day of Fury, which was unsuccessfully conducted in Moscow before. So, as I said, we started to do it for ourselves, but we reached the result which can be important for everyone. Freedom of assembly is one of the basic fundamental rights. This is something which is being taken for granted in this country, something which is being for granted in most democratic countries, European countries, and even in general at the level of the Council of Europe. But this is something which is still being routinely violated in many Eastern European countries. And Russia is not the only example. We saw these problems in Latvia, in Riga, when the Pride parades were banned. We saw this problem in Warsaw in 2005, 2006, when the former mayor of Warsaw banned the Pride parades. And by the way, it's the first time that the European Court of Human Rights delivered its verdict on the freedom of assembly of LGBT people in the case of Poland, which was in 2007. And the Moscow Pride case is just the continuation of the jurisprudence on this topic. This problem also existed in Lithuania this year and last year when they tried to do the Baltic Pride. This problem persists all the time in Serbia, where it's the first time that the Belgrade Pride under a heavy police presence took place last year. So we can see that this decision in the Moscow Pride case will definitely has its impact beyond Russian borders on all the European continent, as all the countries of Europe except Belarus are members of the Council of Europe, which recognized and signed the European Convention on Human Rights. I want to say that we are not limited only to fight for freedom of assembly. As I always say, Moscow Pride has been a campaign which was supposed to attract the maximum attention to the violations of the rights of LGBT people. At the same time, we succeeded because our first press conference in 2005, when we launched our organization and when we launched Moscow Pride, when we didn't even talk about Moscow Pride, didn't gather any single journalist. There was no one in the room. And a year later, with the first Moscow Pride, we had enormous publicity with about 100 journalists, 20 TV camera crews, which were interested in covering this event. It's from this point that they again started to take the gay community seriously. It's from this point that this topic came back to the political agenda since 1993, when homosexuality was decriminalized in Russia. So what I want to say is that Moscow Pride is just one campaign, and this is, and by the way, we also try to organize other public events in Moscow of the LGBT community, but as soon as you mention in the application for these events the words gays, lesbians, homosexuals, homosexuality, homophobia, it was automatically banned by the authorities. And this situation happened not only in Moscow, it happened in St. Petersburg, it happened in other cities where we tried to conduct these actions, in Ryazan, in Tambov, and in many other places. So it was a sort of a systematic problem which authorities didn't want to solve in any way. And this verdict, hopefully, and the departure of the Moscow mayor, who branded gays as satanic weapons of mass destruction of the West, responsible for the HIV epidemic in the city, and even faggots. Hopefully that with the new mayor and with this European Court decision, we will be able to host for the first time ever the legal pride, authorized pride, and with the police protection. What I want to say also is that apart from this case, we have many other cases pending at the European Court of Human Rights, which concerns freedom of association, freedom of expression, family rights of same-sex couples, hate speech. And several of these cases will certainly make maybe even more important and historic precedents at the European level than the Moscow Pride. No one even thinks about it now. But I can tell you is that the case that we have now on same-sex marriages, which was launched by a lesbian couple who tried to register their relations in Moscow and was denied, will definitely have a historic significance within 5 to 6 years when the European Court delivers its decision. Maybe it will not be a marriage, but the jurisprudence of the European Court goes in the direction that family rights of same-sex couples will be recognized at some point, maybe not at first as a marriage institution, but as definitely as an alternative civil union construction or partnership. But no one thinks about the possible consequences, what it will create in Russia as a discussion for recognition of same-sex couples, because this is unimaginable now. But when it comes, I think it will be like a thunder in the clear sky for the Russian authorities and for the Russian society. Another case concerns freedom of hate speech of one of the, we tried to prosecute one of the governors of the Russian regions from Tambov, who said that gays should be torn into pieces and thrown in the wind. And this case went through all the Russian instances and up to the Supreme Court, and even the Supreme Court denied us to prosecute him for his hate speech. This case went to the European Court, and I can tell you that there is not a single case yet at the European Court level on hate speech towards LGBT community. It can create a very interesting precedent, because the European Court will have to define the clear limits to the article guaranteeing freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And the case which we have on freedom of expression in the region of Ryazan, where it's the only region in Russia where propaganda of homosexuality to minors is forbidden. And once again, we tried to repeal this law up to the Constitutional Court in Russia, which didn't succeed. And now we are trying to get this law condemned by the European Court of Human Rights. This is not the only country where it exists, where there is Lithuania, for example, which is trying to pass a similar law on the national level, and there is a big discussion about it. in the European media and also on the level of the European institutions. So as you can see, our target from the very beginning, it was like two ways. One is the way of the direct action groups, to go on the streets, to protest, to manifestate, to attract maximum attention to the violations of LGBT rights by all possible means. We faced harassment, we faced arrests, we faced brutality of the anti-gay protesters, and that's what you saw in this video before my speech. The second line is the challenging of all the irregularities and all the bans of all the events, all the denials of the organizations. So basically, we chose the way to challenge everything in courts, whatever is we consider as contradictory to the European Convention, and then to take this case up to the European Court of Human Rights. Unfortunately, many opposition groups and human rights groups in Russia underestimated the importance of this mechanism, and I can tell you it really surprises many people now that it's the LGBT community which managed to get the first decision on freedom of assembly in the European Court against Russia, while I can tell you that the first Moscow Pride was conducted in 2006, and Putin, under whose regime majority of public events were banned, came to power in 2000, and since 2000 to 2006 there were lots of different public events which were banned, but none of them were unfortunately taken to the European Court of Human Rights. And now the human rights activists chose the same approach, and I'm sure that in the nearest future we will see many other decisions of the European Court on the same issue of freedom of assembly in Russia. What I want to say is that it's really very important to understand that the human rights do not exist only internally, on the national level, guaranteed by your constitution of your state. It also is a universal thing. You have to look at it in the international context. That's why it's not only the European Court mechanism that we're using. We're trying to project all this also on the level of the United Nations. And this is not something which is being used very much in Europe because of the existence of the European Court. And because this mechanism is more a recommendation to the state, but not an obligatory measure. But we decided that we're going to duplicate several of our campaigns also at the level of the United Nations, Human Rights Committee of the United Nations, which will set a very important precedent on the international level, not only on the European level. That's why one of our cases, which is, I think, will be the decision will be delivered shortly, is concerning one of the bans of the pickets in front of the Iranian embassy in Moscow in condemning the violence and death penalty towards minors and gays in Iran. It was banned by the Moscow authorities, and we challenged it in courts and lost, and we decided to take it to the UN Human Rights Committee. And I think that the committee will base its decision on the precedent in the case of Moscow Pride of the European Court. In this case, it will be important not only for Europe, it will be important for the whole world, for everyone who signed the civil pact on the International Pact on Civil and Political Rights. And the second case is also concerning freedom of concerning the Ryazan case, concerning the propaganda of homosexuality to minors. And we are now also in the communication process with the United Nations and with the Russian authorities on these two cases at the level of the UN. So, as you can see, this is all not a limited Russian campaign, it's all a global campaign which will have, in my opinion, tremendous importance and tremendous results in the next 5 to 7 years. And Moscow Pride was just the start.